What's up, everybody? Thank you so much for joining the Routine Revenue Podcast. Today we have Brock Grossbeck, who acquired 2 businesses in the last 18 months. He left his full-time job just this last year. The first business is what we talk in depth on called Deep Cuts Lawn Care. It was a really small business that his uncle ran that he took over after 30 years of his uncle running the business. It was in an entry point of only $4,000 that he bought this business, and he worked as a side hustle until he was able to pivot away and now focus full-time on that business and a second acquisition he made. In this last full season he did by himself, he ended up mowing lawns 3 days a week after his full-time job. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays for a couple hours, and was able to bring in an extra $3,000 a month from that side business. And here in Utah, the season really only lasts about 5 months. He's got a really interesting story I think is really relatable to a lot of people that are looking to just supplement their W-2 income in a few hours a week and at an entry point which a lot of people can afford. If you have a full-time job, Brock's story is really interesting to hear on how he acquired something so small, just the simple assets of the business, and what he's doing to reinvest and start to grow that asset. Thanks so much for joining in here today. If you would like and subscribe, I'd be incredibly grateful, and share with your friends and family. I'm trying to get the word out there about the podcast. Looking forward to diving in. Cool. Thanks, Brock. Welcome to the podcast. Excited to have you on today and talk through some of your journey. Why don't we start by introducing yourself, and let's talk through some of the experience and how you've gone through transitioning out of tech and now what you're up to.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for having me, Blake. So let's see. I'm currently the owner of Deep Cuts Lawn Services and Easy Rest Murphy Beds. These 2 acquisitions happened over the course of the last 18 months. Prior to that, I was working for a bank and have spent a good portion of my career in the tech space here in Utah County and elsewhere. But I decided to make the leap full-time last year and have been moving ever since. It's been an interesting transition, but yeah, it's something I've been dreaming of for a long time at this point.
Nice. Well, congrats on the transition.
Thanks.
Love to talk through. Let's start with Deep Cuts. That was the first, 2 acquisitions, 18 months. It's no joke.
Yeah,
And I know they're not huge, but I think a good portion of the audience can relate to your story. So let's talk about Deep Cuts first. And would
yeah,
love to hear, like, what were you doing at work? And then how'd you find this, and how did you work through that and things like that?
right. So, um, I guess let's start with the pandemic. Pandemic, put everyone in sort of a tailspin and eventually led me to make a transition and go full bore into marketing, which led me to a position where I was working, W-2, 9 to 5, prior to getting into Deep Cuts Lawn Services and the Murphy Bed business. But it was October of 2022 where I learned that my uncle, who had run a lawn care business for almost 25 years at that point, was looking to, I guess, be done with mowing. He'd already retired from his full-time gig as an insurance professional, and again was trying to kind of wrap things up with lawn care. And so as soon as I heard, I jumped on it. He was finishing up literally some of his last lawns in October, and he's like, "Come out and mow with me. Come check it out and see if it's something that you're interested in." So I went out, mowed with him a few times, and decided that I wanted to take it over. Now, keep in mind that this business wasn't anything to shout about at that time. I think he'd maxed out around a couple dozen customers and had really used the business as a means to help pay for his kids' college education and uh, church mission service experiences and things like that.
Was he
But
doing it full time?
no, so he had done it as a side gig
Hmm.
to his insurance full time work. And in my mind, I was like, okay, well, you've been using the same mowers for 20 years plus, and you've kind of stuck to your neighborhood. Um, I thought, I could come in, introduce some technology. Uh, I mean, you hear a lot of the social media leadership voices out there
Yep.
saying, throw in some tech and you're going to see some amazing improvements in your company. And that honestly helped, but it's not what everyone says. There's a lot more than adding a payment app or adding some route optimization app that'll really turn the tide for your business. There's a lot more that has to be done. But in my naive perspective, I thought I could come in and make a couple of adjustments and I'd see the business leap in terms of annual revenue. So, season concluded. I bought the business for, I believe it was $4,000, and that included all of his equipment. So it was two mowers, um, and maybe a trimmer and a trailer. And so I took that over and I kind of planned and plotted for the coming season. And here in Utah, usually the mowing season begins around April, depending on the weather. We get snow in June sometimes and throws things off. But so I planned and found a platform that I thought would be really helpful and help me in terms of payment processing and you know sending out quotes for lawn care and figuring out the best routes for servicing the lawns. And as the time came, I thought, I'd hire a few employees and I could pass it off, but that actually wasn't the case. I ended up mowing lawns all summer, and I kept on the high school kid who was assisting my uncle at the time, and he was actually a big help, and he's headed on his mission here in the next few months. Um, but it was basically the two of us all summer. We mowed 3 days a week, and I soon realized that I wasn't going to grow as quickly as I'd hoped, and I needed to do a little bit more planning. And I should say, at this time, I was still working my 9 to 5 job. So I would Tuesday through Thursday, I would finish up work around 4:30, and I would go down into the locker room in our office, change into my lawn mowing clothes, and then head out and go pick up my guy, and we'd go mow lawns. And we do that for 3 or 4 hours each day, Tuesday through Thursday. So we did that, and as I crunched numbers and figured out what our revenue was going to be by the end of the year and covering all my expenses, which at that time was occasional maintenance and some gas and just some hourly wages for my employee. I realized that I wasn't going to be able to do much. I needed some of my equipment was literally on its last wheel, and I needed a replacement. I needed to find out how to better market to the audience that I wanted to eventually bring in. And um, I just didn't have enough experience at that point. I didn't have a season under my belt to know
Yep.
exactly what that would take. So eventually there was a kind of a turning point in the middle the middle of the summer, around July, where it made sense to leave the 9 to 5 and go full bore into the situation. And I should preface this by saying that my wife works full time. She is really good at what she does. She's an accountant and works for a tech company here in the county, and um, really is outstanding. And she's the rock of our family, and she knows my personality and that working a W-2 would be tough to do for the next 40 years, even though entrepreneurship isn't, any easier. It brings its
Yep.
own unique challenges. But she was the one that kind of gave me the nod and said, if we're going to do this, right now it's the time. We have, at the time we had one kid, and we're planning on our second. And so the family dynamic and expenses associated with a larger family were pretty manageable at the time. And so she kind of cut the ribbon for me and let me run free on this. So
Yes.
um,
Real quick, I got a
yeah,
handful of questions that I'd love to dive into.
yeah,
So
let's do it.
you paid 4,000 for the business. You buy basically you're buying equipment and of course his customer list.
Correct.
Where are these residential or commercial?
Yeah, almost entirely residential. We
Okay.
have a couple commercial accounts, but almost entirely residential.
Are they on monthly fees or how does that work? They sign up for the months of the summer.
Yeah, so I charge them on a monthly basis. We offer a weekly and biweekly mowing to these customers, and a lot of them are used to paying with a check or in cash.
Yeah.
And my uncle, if I'm remembering correctly, discovered Venmo a few years back and was able to transition some of his customers over to Venmo. And in my mind, I'm like, if I'm going to have all these customers, I can't be spending all this time going out and collecting, payments each month. So, um, anyways, I set up a means for people to pay online. But um, yeah, it was weekly, biweekly mowing, and we collect on a monthly basis. But there's no contract, no nothing.
Yeah.
It's just an understanding that we're going to take care of your lawn, and if you had any concerns, come talk to us, and we'd adjust accordingly.
And I assume the following season it's the same. You kind of assume you're
Yep.
going into that assuming, hey, we got 30 accounts or whatever. We're assuming we're starting over May 1st or whenever the start date is and kind of presuming through the season and then kind of
hmm
just renew each year.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So we begin each season, or prior to each season, sending out communication to our customers,
Mm.
and that's, I should say, that's important. For a lot of the customers, I didn't have email addresses. I didn't have,
Mhm.
all this, a bit of contact information. And a lot of people push back in sharing their email address. Um,
Mm.
it just so happened with the customer base that I'm working with tend to be, the boomer generation and older. And
Mm.
so some are great with tech, others aren't. It's kind of a toss up. And so I had to push some of my customers to kind of see the benefit
Mm.
in going a little more digital. But once I was able to collect everyone's email address and get things settled, then yeah, at the beginning of each season, we sent out a notice letting people know that lawn service is going to be starting here in the next several weeks, all weather dependent, and we'll send you a notice when we're on our way out. And then if they have any concerns or whatnot, we can address those. But we also come out with new updates, letting them know, these are some additional services that we're offering.
Mm.
We've got new equipment, got new team. We're ready to uh, really whip your lawn into shape here and get it ready for the coming season.
I can imagine your uncle he was just doing some pretty basic lawn care. I imagine there's additional services that are pretty simple once I mean, to go into an existing customer base and upsell. Do I understand that correctly? I mean,
Yeah,
you're doing lawn feed, I'm sure you could do trimming and other things. I don't know the industry, but like there's
yeah,
other things you could upsell relatively easily. Is that a fair
yeah,
assumption?
yeah. So after looking at kind of the catalog of services that lawn care companies typically offer, I learned that there were some easy additions that could be made. And so we decided to add aeration services,
Yep.
power raking akin to dethatching, and overseeding, none of which require any sort of permitting or certification or licensure. If you are trimming trees, for example, that requires additional
Yeah.
insurance coverage. And I mean, kudos to my uncle for running this for 24 years or so. But he kind of did everything neighbor to neighbor. And so
Mm.
there wasn't a real need to go out and figure out some of these coverages and insurances to cover the company, especially if you're someone who's interested in growing the business. So those were additional things I had to figure out and decide what was the best route. And again, looking at the services that were available, the services that we decided to add were pretty, um, I guess, risk free in terms of what's out there.
Yeah. Do you have an idea about, I don't know if your uncle tracked it meticulously, but any idea what the revenue was when you bought business?
Good question. Um, I, to be honest, I don't. And I knew,
You knew how he knew about how many customers he was servicing. He could tell you
correct.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, and he was actually in the process of passing his customers off to another
Mhm.
competitor in the area.
Oh, interesting.
And so, um, I definitely could have requested, some financials, and, he did a good job at retaining that information. But it was almost like starting over, given that he had sold off a lot of his customers. But I probably should have gone out and figured that out beforehand. I guess I was just caught up in the moment and excited to finally be a business owner that here I
Yeah.
was and, had my business, but
I mean, relatively low risk, right? I mean,
correct,
$4,000, you're buying the assets of the business, including a customer base. Um, you're not starting from zero, at least your first
correct.
year. So,
Yeah,
okay. So your first year was 2023. Is that right? Your first
correct. Uh-huh.
season. Okay.
Yep.
Do you have an idea of like how did you do that first year?
Yeah. Yeah, this first year working 3 days a week with about a dozen customers, we made about 15,000.
Cool.
And
And so they're what, 5 months ish?
yeah, the season usually, again, it depends. I think last year we got into the first week of October, and given that the winter last year was pretty tough, we weren't able to start really until the end of April. So usually you're going to see April 1st to end of October, but we got in, yeah, about, I think that's about 5 months,
Okay. Cool.
6 months.
And you worked that. I mean, we'll get into it, but you worked that in addition to Murphy Bed.
So yeah, Murphy Bed came later, even after the season ended. So Murphy Bed came in October, and do you want me to just head
No,
into
let's
Murphy
pause.
Bed?
Let's pause on that.
Okay.
Maybe a few more follow up questions. So three
Sure.
days a week, 15K,
Yep.
gross. I mean, what's your expenses like? I'm sure the P&L is really lean on a business like that. It's kind of the
Yeah.
beauty of it.
Yeah. Honestly, given that I was working with um, some equipment that was a little older, generally you can get away with, if you have a newer mower, you can get away with a seasonal maintenance job, and then throughout the season you can do your own oil changes and sharpening the blades and of the mowers and whatnot. But I had to make a couple trips to the maintenance shop to get my mowers looked at, and so those were my primary expenses outside of fuel. Um, and outside of those two, I was paying my guy, um, a pretty lean amount per hour, and that was it.
College student, summer job type thing.
Yeah, high school
Oh,
student.
high school. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I was paying him 12, 12 and a half dollars an hour.
Cool. I mean,
Yeah.
relatively flexible schedule. It's probably
Yep.
a win-win there.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah, and if he wasn't available, I'd basically ask, "Hey, do you have any neighbor friends who
Yeah.
are willing to come out and mow with me?" Unfortunately, he's really responsible, really consistent, so that only happened a couple times. But yeah, just honestly, as I think about growing the company, I'm like, if I could find another one of him and each of my employees, I'm gonna be ready to go. So it's
Cool.
a good guy.
So did you do 3 full days a week, or what did the schedule you could kinda keep those hours in the evening?
Yeah, yeah. So like I was saying earlier, I'd finish around 4:30, and go and pick up my equipment and change, and then pick up my guy, and then we'd go mow for 3 or 4 hours. Kind of depended. So we usually wrap up between 7 and 8.
Yeah.
Just depended on how many lawns we had that day, and we try to break it up geographically. So the days, fortunately, there were some groupings, some natural geographic groupings, so we didn't have to travel too much in between lawns, and so that kind of dictated who we would mow on
Hmm.
Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday.
I mean, essentially, for the summer months, you're able to add nearly $3,000 a month
Yeah,
of income gross. I mean, but there probably not much comes out of that in terms of expenses. But
yeah.
um,
If
working
you,
a few hours, an extra few hours a week.
yeah, yeah. If you're staying on top of your equipment and treating it like you would, any other prized possession, then you're going to get a lot of run out of your equipment.
Hmm.
And so had I had the equipment that I have now and wasn't so concerned about buying equipment the following year, then it could have been, a significant sum for us at that time. And my mindset right now though is to take whatever penny I earn and it's to put it back into the business. I'm not ready to take from the company yet. I've got goals set for where I want to see the business and how I want it to operate. And so yeah, in terms of take, that's probably realistically, it's probably another season or two out.
Hmm. Yep. Um, so what's the plans with this business? Obviously, sounds like you want to grow it. What does that look
Yeah.
like?
Yeah. Yeah. So I- I've done some math and figured out that I would like to hire a team, and that team is basically dedicated to the equipment that's available. Um, and so my goal, and we're making progress towards this goal. My goal is to have a morning shift and afternoon shift to operate the
Mhm.
equipment, so that equipment isn't standing still. It's generating revenue,
Mm.
and um, there's going to be some wiggle room here, but I've found that once we hit about 50-ish, maybe 60 customers is pushing it, in terms of weekly and biweekly mowing strictly, then I've reached the point to where that equipment is being optimized and the hours in a day are being used entirely.
Mhm.
And by breaking up, and I don't have enough experience at this point, but in my mind, I'm thinking, if I get guys working 4 or 5 hours in the morning and then 4 or 5 hours in the afternoon, then my guys will be fresh and they'll be ready to, attack these lawns and offer great service. Um, so that'll allow me to squeeze in a few extra lawns if my logic is right. So um, once I hit that marker, then I'll let that run and take the revenue from a season and pour that into equipment for the next season and basically replicate that model. Truck, trailer, commercial size, residential mower, push mower, trimmer, edger, and blower, and rinse and repeat. Now there's people online who are a lot more experienced than me. So I'm trying to learn from everyone I can. And there's a lot of great resources on YouTube specifically that talk about lawn care. So I'm not
Mhm.
going to claim I'm any sort of expert or guru, but given that a lot of the people that you see online are in warmer regions of the country,
Mm.
you try to adapt and figure out what's going to work for your area. So
I've looked at I looked at quite a few of these businesses because I like them a lot. Of course, a lot of them are in St. George, right, where
yeah.
they're year round.
Mm,
And it seems like what you're experiencing and seeing even at a smaller scale is really the capacity of the count of customers is dependent upon your equipment stack and
mhm,
then shift. Who can fill this shift, right? And so
Yeah.
one mower can run for probably 8 or 9 hours a day at full capacity straight.
Yep.
Um, that might take two people to run one mower, and therefore you're limited to where that mower is at any given moment. And obviously, then like you go to the next level, you need a lot more capital to pour into another shift,
Yep.
essentially, of people and equipment, which is interesting. I looked at them at maybe a little bit bigger scale, but you even hit that at a small scale, which is like, well, now all of a sudden we need four mowers to do the same job, or at least double to the next stage, which adds
Right.
complexity to it, but interesting.
hmm Yeah. And I, I don't know if you guys have shopped around for, um,
I bought a mower last year, man.
did you?
That's stuff is not cheap.
It's not cheap. It is not cheap.
It's a zero turn, but I bought it because I thought, you know what, my kids will inherit this someday in 20 years.
Sure. Yeah. And you know what? That's if like I said, if you treat it like it's a prized possession, that thing will treat you well. And that's
Yeah,
exactly what my uncle did with his mower. He had an X-Mark mower that um, he treated well and really ran into the ground and really got his money out of it.
yeah.
You hear of some of these larger lawn care businesses, landscaping businesses, what have you, who buy equipment for their team and kind of pass it off. And uh, there's basically a manufacturer um, guesstimate of how long the mower will last.
Mhm,
And some of these teams, run these mowers into the ground before they have a chance to reach that marker.
mhm.
Or there's other teams out there who treat these mowers really well and they really get the value out of the mower. So um, to give any listeners an idea, if you're going to buy a commercial grade, either residential or commercial mower, I mean, entry, if you're going to buy new, you're probably looking around 5,000 to start.
Mhm.
The mower that I bought is uh, a well recognized brand, and I paid 9 for it. So,
Wow.
um, and that's it's like any other investment. You're trying to decide what's a worthy investment in order to offer the best service you can to your customers. And so I just figured if I treat this well and keep at it, that this mower will do a lot of great business for us.
Cool. Let's transition. Would love to
Okay.
hear about Murphy Bed.
Yeah. So the season concluded for lawn care, and realizing that this might be a little longer of a play than I expected. And I'll conclude my comments on deep cuts by saying that there's a lot of different ways to approach lawn care. There's a lot of different services out there that um, I didn't list off. So there's a lot of ways to get into this game, and there's a lot of people out there who are looking for the service. But I've kind of decided for now the approach that I wanted to take, and realized that this would be a multi-season approach to grow the business the way I wanted it to. So knowing that was going to be the case and it was going to be a matter of time, I I realized that I wanted something else that would consume my time during the off season, which can be 5 to 6 months. I didn't plan on turning my truck into a snowplow, which is often common here in
Mhm.
Utah. That takes special, uh, expensive equipment that I wasn't ready to step into, and um, had been doing a lot of setting up about SBA loans, which that's a topic for another
Yeah.
few episodes, which I'm sure at some point you'll probably dive into. But I was exploring that option and realizing that I had um, potentially some opportunities to collect some funding within my circle of friends and family. I I looked at that possibility and was scouring, all the websites that have business listings. My favorite of which is bizbuysell.com. It seems to be pretty consistent, pretty straightforward and user friendly. So I spent a lot of my time looking through there and trying to find an opportunity. And I found a couple that I looked into and reached out to the business brokers and um, did some of my own due diligence to figure out if those options would be a good possibility. And in the midst of going through that process, my brother-in-law, kind of out of left field, calls me up. This is late November, early December, and told me that he had found a business that he was really interested in buying. And I asked him what the industry was, and he told me Murphy beds. I was like, why the heck are you interested in Murphy beds? And so he's like, I know it sounds crazy. Let me send you an email with some information. Look at some of the prior tax years and let me know what you think. So he sent me the original owner's Schedule Cs for the last couple of years. And I looked through those and saw that, it seemed like a healthy business. Um, Definitely a smaller business, bigger than my lawn care business at the time, but definitely a business that had been around for 30 years and had a lot of experience here in the state and a lot of recognition as far as Murphy bed businesses go. And so you know, I reached out to my brother-in-law and we chatted a little bit more about the opportunity. It did help that we had a 20% owner coming in who was going to fund the acquisition outright for us and allow us to possess 80% ownership between my brother-in-law and myself, and pay back that loan over the course of 3 years. So within a matter of a week, we had identified the business, or I should say, Mitch, my brother-in-law, identified the business, and we worked with family to acquire the business and had an agreement signed. I think again within a week or a week and a half.
Hmm. How did your brother-in-law find this? And if you could share details on what you bought it for and the finance.
Yeah, yeah. So he found the business. I believe it was Biz by Sell. Yeah, he was looking at um, he was looking at smaller businesses when I was looking at something larger. I wanted to find something that had some more significant um, owner take home at the end of each year than what this original than what this Murphy bed business was offering. But after realizing my own um, inexperience and the ideal situation that I was kind of finding myself in, knowing that I would have a brother or a brother-in-law who was going to be my partner. We could work together and, throw ideas back and forth and really figure this out together. And knowing that we were going to have family who was pretty flexible in terms of terms um, of the purchase and the loan, um, that really made it a great situation. So going into those details, we bought the business for 106,000, and the debt is to be paid back over the course of 3 years with an interest rate of think I don't remember off the top of my head. I think it's around 3%. And we received also an additional cash infusion of about $15,000 that would help us move the needle. The the way the prior owner worked with the business in terms of marketing was strictly by trade shows. He would attend a handful of trade shows each year, and the man just knew how to sell to his target audience. He And that's something that we're trying to figure out right now is if Mitch and I can sell to that same audience, or if we need to make some sort of adjustment to account for our own strengths and the way that we sell and some of the creative ideas that we have in terms of the direction that we want to move the business.
Hmm.
Anyways,
What was the business? What did it do last year in revenue?
yeah,
About
it
time.
did. Yeah, I have it up here actually. So, okay, this is actually 2022, but I think
Okay.
2023 is about the same, if I recall. 2022 is gross sales. He did 198,000.
Okay.
So
And what
much
was
better.
net? Did you-
His take home at the end of the year, if I can do some math here, let me scroll down. His take home, I'm not good with these tax forms. I'm always trying to decode everything, but his take home at the end of the year was around 40 to 50,000.
Okay. Cool.
So
And to be
that,
clear, a Murphy bed it's the bed that folds up into the wall. That's a generic term for that bed that folds
yeah,
up into a wall, right?
yeah. If I
It's not
can,
like a franchise called Murphy Beds or something. Okay.
correct. Yeah, no franchise. It's purely the style of bed that uses typically a metal frame that's usually anchored into cabinetry, or in our case, your floor,
Mm,
for safety purposes. And there is slight differentiation between a Murphy bed and a wall bed. Murphy bed uses specifically designed springs to create resistance and prevent the bed from falling out as you fold it out. A wall bed uses a piston system that allows for the same capability for that bed to fold out. And there's different configurations in terms of um, how Murphy beds are set up, or wall beds. I'm sure if you're any sort of DIY or home decoration connoisseur, if you're on Instagram or Pinterest or YouTube, you'll see all sorts of variations. You'll see desks that turn into beds. You'll see
mm.
cabinetry that turns into bunk beds. There's all sorts of options out there.
So he's sold through trade show. Why was this attractive when you came across this deal? And then I'd be curious to hear like how your experience, maybe from other jobs or whatever, you felt like, okay, we could take this and run with it.
Yeah, yeah. So again, it was Mitch who was keyed into this, and um, he, based off of the numbers and consulting with um, family and looking over the numbers, fit to face value, it looked to be a healthy business. There wasn't any lingering debt associated with the business that we had to sort out with the original owner. There seemed to be a pretty straightforward process in selling, which we've learned since then that uh, there's some things that we have to figure out to kind of dial that in. For me, honestly, the thing that attracted me the most is, one, I didn't have to put any of my money in upfront. I could pay back my portion of ownership of the business over the course of several years, and I wouldn't have to engage in an SBA loan and, put my next child up for ransom if I couldn't pay the debt back.
Hmm.
For those who aren't familiar with SBA loans, if you don't have all the money up front to put in a down payment, then oftentimes um, your home comes into play. And some people are okay with that type of risk and others aren't, but that now becomes part of the equation in terms of how your debt is paid back. So there is some risk there, but for some people, it's a great option. They have a lot of experience in that arena already, and so they move forward. But again, for me, I didn't have to pay any money up front. I had basically a team that I'd be working with, and so there was some level of security there, knowing that we could figure this out together. Mitch, he has a lot of shipping experience, flat packing specifically, and has done a lot there. And so, in terms of our desire to scale the business and eventually increase volume, we knew that there was someone on our team who had some expertise there and would know how to help us make that leap when the time came. For myself specifically, I grew up watching my dad make furniture in our garage at first, and then we moved to Utah, and he was able to build a shop in our backyard. And so I've always had an interest and fascination with carpentry. And so working with this type of furniture, it drew me in, and it felt like something familiar, something that I could do. So that was a draw as well. But I have to say that that financial situation that this acquisition um, put us in was honestly really, really enticing.
Nice. Um, would love to hear like what your day to day looks like now. You're running these two businesses. Obviously, one's a little more seasonal. We're coming into that season. How does that change your day to day? Things like that.
Yeah. Honestly, the days kind of blend into each other. You just you do your best to put together a plan, but somehow, some way, the plan always seems to be upended because there's some other priority that takes place of that plan. So basically, right now, we're just off the back of a back-to-back weekend for local trade shows here in the Utah County and Salt Lake County area. And so right now we're chasing down leads, and basically that is us scheduling in-home consultations and out meeting with customers and helping them design the type of bed they're looking for. And then sending out estimates and following up with customers and working with our um, cabinetry house to get them the orders and make sure all the deliveries happen on time. All those deliveries are done by Mitch and myself. You work with us from hello all the way to goodbye. We're the guys that um, help you design the bed and then help install the bed and go and do all that work. Since lawn care is just about to start, today's March 21st. Assuming it doesn't snow next week, which I saw a possibility for snow next week, we could be mowing as soon as next week or the week after. It all kind of depends on when everyone turns their sprinkler systems back on. I don't want to be the reason for someone freezing their pipes and breaking their sprinkler system. So, yeah, we just got our equipment all prepped and ready to go, and we're going through trainings, safety and equipment trainings, and getting that stuff lined up. But it honestly is looking at each day and seeing if the plan that we made for the week is still valid or if something else is taking priority.
Nice. Um, kind of in closing, would love your thoughts on you've done two of these acquisitions now. You're running two businesses. Maybe I should ask you in 4 months after the summer, but
Yeah.
um, would you buy again versus build, or how would you think about someone that's maybe early in this journey, has a full-time job still, is considering would love to make an extra $2,000-3,000 a month at some point as a side
Yeah.
hustle.
Yeah.
What would that look like, and what would you suggest?
Um, Honestly, I would recommend this to anyone with, uh, you know, a reality check to make sure that you're willing to put in the time and the effort. And this can start as a side hustle. This doesn't need to immediately replace your 9 to 5. Um, and and so I would start by, identifying the skills that you have and figure out what those skills and strengths lend to. If it's industry specific, then you might consider branching off and offering a core or supplemental service to work that you're already doing. Or if you're looking for something new entirely, don't hesitate to look on Biz Buy Sell, or if you're local here in the Utah area, look at KSL. Honestly, and if you're out of state and there's a local listing site, I don't know, maybe Facebook Marketplace might have something as well. But
I see some great deals on Facebook Marketplace, actually.
do you? Okay,
Yeah, small
awesome.
businesses.
Yeah. So don't hesitate. One thing that my father-in-law always says is don't be afraid to offend someone with an offer. And that's something that at first I was like, oh yeah, yeah, whatever. But the more I've thought about it, the more I'm like, shoot your shot. Go, you know, go and try to figure it out. Start small, or if you have significant funding, either from yourself or from people who believe in you, then take the leap. Don't let 5, 10, 20 years pass before you think that you're ready to go. Go and give it a shot. There's a high likelihood that you might fail, but what if you succeed? And that's what resonates in my mind is if I just keep, you know, I keep moving my feet, I keep moving in a direction, then I'm bound to succeed. I just need to be persistent and go one more rep.
Cool. Brock, thanks so much for taking the time today. It was great to chat through your two acquisitions. Any suggestions on where people could find you if they want to look you up or talk more about some of these?
Yeah, best place is just LinkedIn. Brock Grossbeck. You can find me there.
Cool. Thanks, Brock.
Thanks, Blake.